Every position feeds directly into the digital twin. The avatar updates continuously, without lag, without approximation. And somewhere in a server, a version of each player exists, moving exactly as they move, frozen exactly when they need to be frozen. That's what changed. Not just the image, the source of the image. Now, let's talk about what you actually see on screen, because this is where most people's understanding stops. When a VAR check is triggered for offside, the broadcast cuts to that familiar frozen image. And for years, for decades really, what appeared was a wireframe, a silhouette. Two generic shapes representing two players, with a line drawn between them. It worked, technically. The line was accurate, the call was correct. But nobody believed it, because the image didn't look real. It looked like something built in 10 minutes by someone who had never watched football. And when the decision is to disallow a goal in the 90th minute of a World Cup knockout game, technically accurate is not enough. People need to see it to accept it. That was the actual problem. Not the data, the presentation of the data. What the new system changes is precisely that gap. The gap between what the technology knows and what the viewer understands.
Now, when that bar frame appears, you're looking at a render that carries the player's body scan, the camera tracking data from that exact moment, and a photorealistic overlay. It places him in the actual position he was in. His jersey number is there, his silhouette is his. The way his arm extends and the angle of his torso match the footage. You're not being asked to trust an abstraction anymore. You're being shown the evidence. That's a different relationship between the sport and the person watching it. But the avatars are only the surface.
What most people watching the broadcast never see is what happens to that data after the final whistle. Because the digital twin doesn't disappear when the match ends. It becomes something else entirely. FIFA and Lenovo built a system they call Football AI Pro. It takes everything captured during 90 minutes of play and transforms it into tactical intelligence. Every movement, every position, every transition processed automatically for all 48 national teams. Think about what that means for a moment. There are nations at this World Cup that don't have the budget for elite coaching staffs. Countries where the technical director is doing the job of 5 people. Teams that previously had no access to the kind of post-match analysis the biggest programs take for granted. Now they do. After every game, Football AI Pro generates a full tactical report. Movement patterns, defensive shape, pressing triggers. It identifies where space opened up, who was in position to exploit it, and who wasn't. All derived from the same tracking data that feeds the avatars. This is what technology looks like when it's actually used well. Not as a spectacle for the broadcast, not as a marketing asset for a sponsor, but as a tool that changes what smaller programs can do with the information they have. The digital twin isn't just a visual effect. It's a data set, and that data set is doing work long after you've turned off the television. Here's where it gets complicated, because the moment you say biometric data and AI in the same sentence, a very reasonable question follows. Who owns this? Where does it go? And what happens to a digital model of a human body when the tournament is over? These aren't paranoid questions. They're the right ones.
The tracking system captures 29 points per player per frame. Across an entire match, that's millions of data points describing physical behavior in extraordinary detail. The way a player moves under pressure, how his body responds to fatigue, the mechanics of acceleration and deceleration. That's not just sports data. That's a biological signature. FIFA's position is that everything captured is used exclusively for sporting performance and official broadcast purposes.
The body scans and movement data are processed within a closed system. No personal exposure, no commercial transfer to third parties. The avatars exist for the match, and for tactical analysis, nothing beyond that. And technically, the system tracks motion, not identity. The 29 points don't know a player's name. They know his geometry, but the geometry is linked to his name. That's the part that matters. What protects athletes here isn't just the technical architecture of the system, it's the contractual framework around it. Players consent through their national federations. The data has a defined scope and a defined endpoint. Whether that's enough depends on how much you trust the institutions holding it, which is, honestly, the question behind every question about AI right now. Now, step back from the tournament for a second, because what FIFA and Lenovo built at this World Cup doesn't stay at this World Cup. The technology has a direction.
and that direction is already visible if you know where to look.
Video game studios have spent decades building player likenesses by hand. Artists work from reference photos, adjusting sliders and approximating body types. The result is always slightly off, always a version of the player rather than the player himself. What exists now could change that entirely. A body scan combined with real-time motion capture is exactly what game developers have been trying to replicate for years. The infrastructure built for these matches is essentially a production-grade system for generating photorealistic athlete models at scale. The same applies to broadcasting.
Right now, the avatars appear during VAR reviews. That's a narrow window, but the underlying system can render a player's digital twin from any angle at any moment. The gap between a VAR freeze frame and a real-time 3D broadcast overlay is smaller than most people realize. And then there's the question nobody is asking out loud yet. At what point does the digital twin become more useful than the broadcast footage itself? At what point does the data model become the primary layer and the camera image become the reference? That shift hasn't happened, but the foundation for it is being built right now. On these pitches, in these matches, what starts as a VAR tool rarely stays only that.
If you've made it this far into the video with me, that already tells me something about you. You're not just watching football. You're watching what's happening around football, the layer underneath the game that most people never think about. So I want to invite you to subscribe to Footy Leo and follow us every day, because this is exactly the kind of story we bring. It's the ones hiding in plain sight inside the sport you already love. And I'm genuinely curious, when you see that VAR avatar on screen now, does it make you trust the decision more? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. But here's what I haven't told you yet.
The avatar you see on screen during a VAR review is a still frame, a frozen moment. What the system actually produces is continuous. It doesn't pause when the match pauses. It doesn't wait for a controversy to activate. It is running right now, in real time, building a complete digital record of every player on that field, every sprint, every collision, every moment a player holds his hamstring and tries not to show it. The twin sees all of it. And that changes something fundamental about what a football match actually is. It's no longer just 90 minutes of athletic competition. It's 90 minutes of structured data collection happening at the same time in the same space. The match and the model are running in parallel. Always. That's the part that stays with you. There's a version of Mbappe that exists right now in a server somewhere. Not a photo, not a highlight clip, a model built from his body, updated by his movement, accurate to the centimeter. It was there when he warmed up. It was there when he touched the ball for the first time. It was there when he didn't. And when the tournament ends, when the stadiums go quiet and the squads fly home, some version of that model will still exist. A record of how he moved at this specific moment in his career, at this age, in this condition, under this pressure. That's new. That's genuinely new. We've always had footage. We've always had statistics. But a geometrically precise, continuously updated physical record of an athlete's body in competition is something else. That's a different kind of memory. And maybe that's what this technology is really about. Underneath all the VAR controversy, the tactical reports, and the broadcast overlays, maybe it's about permanence, the attempt to capture something that has always been impossible to fully capture. A human being, moving, deciding, competing. That ball goes in or it doesn't. The line says he was on or off. But the twin was watching the whole time. If this story made you think, share it with 3 people who follow football closely. They won't see this conversation happening anywhere else. Follow Footy Leo. Leave a comment telling me what you want us to investigate next. The best suggestions become the next video. We'll see you there.